On this week's podcast, Timmy and I discuss who's worse at negotiating, Neville Chamberlain or Donald J. Trump. We talk about the Iran memorandum of understanding.
Bald, blind, and buddies.
Timmy C., my blind friend, how the hell are you, pal?
I'm good. It's a nice, beautiful day out there in northern Midwest. It's Wisconsin.
Did you get any traction, by the way, on comments? Anybody comment on that Kristen Walker thing about Wisconsin being flyover country? Because I disagree. I think that your home state of Iowa, you could make the argument that that's flyover country. But I think Wisconsin is still pretty hip. Did you get any comments or no?
Well, I mean, there's two things, right, John? There's no, we didn't get comments, and then there's the East Coast perception of Wisconsin, and that is clearly flyover country.
Well, the fellow we're having on in a couple of weeks talked during COVID, Brett Stevens, about how New Yorkers basically think that the world starts and stops between, Central Park West and Battery Park or what have you, and they can have a 30-minute debate. He wrote an article about this because he was talking about how to appropriately address COVID. And he, talked about, look, for New York City with people in elevators and in close quarters, the reaction or the response to it should be foundationally different than Wisconsin, because most New Yorkers, and he actually said this, most New Yorkers can't find Wisconsin on a map.
Yeah.
So I you're absolutely right. I think there's probably an East and a West Coast bias towards, quote unquote, the Midwest. I mean, Wisconsin certainly counts as the Midwest. When I think of the Midwest, I think of the old Big Eight, which is Nebraska, Iowa, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think of Wisconsin. I think of them more of Big Ten, but they're clearly Midwest. But I was born in Ohio. You and I went to college in Indiana and so forth. So we've experienced it. I think you're right, but I also think that maybe people don't know what they're missing by not going out there.
Yeah, I happen to like it.
Yeah. So, and by the way, for all of the 7 or 8 fathers that are listening today, happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you, Timmy.
Yeah, happy Father's Day, John. And fathers out there, you are the antidote to toxic femininity. So just get out there and challenge it, walk it off,
Could you say that in human
rub some dirt on it.
Could you say that in human speak? What is toxic femininity? Is that an actual psychological term?
Well, sort of, yeah. So there's this Eric Neumann, I think it talks about the basically the toxic mother that's sort of over nurturing and then leads children to not fully develop and grow out on their own. And you can see that in books such as The Coddling of the American Mind by our hero, my hero, Jonathan Haidt. And basically the masculinity can help teach other strengths such as resilience, shaking it off, sucking it up, all that good manly stuff.
The British, yeah.
Stiff upper lip.
Stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I always joke, and it drives Katie crazy, but I walk around all day going, the single greatest, most important day of the year, Father's Day.
Yeah.
As it should be, But one of the things that I do love about Father's Day is that usually the U.S. Open, I think always, I don't want to say always because I'm not 100% certain, but the U.S. Open, the golf tournament, which is my favorite golf tournament. I love the Masters. The 4 majors I usually watch, and I'll see a tournament here and there. I grew up watching golf with my dad, so it kind of reconnects me to my past. And the Masters, as majestic as it is and so forth, it's the same course. What makes the U.S. Open, it's different to me, is number one, it's very democratic. You have to qualify, right? Mm-hmm. So past champions get a 10-year exemption, which makes me smile because Phil Mickelson is no longer eligible. He has to qualify, and he's just an absolute dirtbag. If for people who don't know, just Google Phil Mickelson this week. He was kicked out of his own private country club for making unwanted advances to a female staffer. The general manager was forced to go out on the course, get him off the course, and say, go home, don't come back. They launched an investigation, and they kicked him out of the club.
He's not a paragon of virtue like Tiger Woods? Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so I will differentiate between the two, and here's the reason why. I don't think people's personal lives are any of my business, and I really don't. And I mean that even with Phil Mickelson. I feel bad for Tiger Woods because he's had so many damn surgeries that I think, unfortunately, he's a drug addict now, that he's become addicted to painkillers. And I think that's an all too common reality for a lot of Americans. You're a psychiatrist. You have to see this, Timmy. Right?
Yeah.
I just think that Phil Mickelson's behavior, and we can spend a podcast on it because I can go in depth about how he was investigated for insider trading. He owed money to a gambler, Billy Walters. the FBI shows up to Muirfield to talk to him about it. And let me let you in on something. If the FBI shows up to talk to a celebrity or a person of note, it's not a question of guilt. It's, do you want to die in prison? He rolls over on Billy Walters, who he gave the information to, sends him to prison, and then has Trump pardon him. I mean, that's just example A, and we can talk about others later. But again, I shouldn't spend Father's Day bashing Phil Mickelson. This is about the U.S. Open. So the U.S. Open, you have to qualify. It's democratic. The USGA, the United States Golf Association, has a rule that they try to make the course represent every shot. So you get the short par 4, you get the long par 5, you get this, you get that. And usually the winners are right at par or, a stroke or two under, a stroke or two over, and that'll be this week's trivia question. But I always love the U.S. Open, and it's always on the greatest day of the year, which is, of course, what, Timmy?
Father's Day.
There you go, baby. There you go. So anything else going on? What are you guys doing for Father's Day?
I think we're just hanging out. We're going over to my father-in-law's tonight. I think we're getting a takeout, bringing it over, something like that. What
takeout do you get with Blue Leaf being Indian? Like, do you have a region? Do you have we get a lot of Greek here. Katie and I like that. There's Thai food that we have here, which is excellent. There's obviously the staples, the Chinese and the Italian and so forth. But I've really sort of tried to broaden my palate. Some of this stuff I really enjoy.
Yeah, we get barbecue and Chinese a lot. So
really,
yeah,
okay.
I love a good barbecue, a good brisket. Oh man.
If you lived closer to me, I'd make you one every week if you wanted.
And
I make a solid one, I'll be honest. So, well, Timmy, let me give you the answer to last week's trivia question, then I'll dovetail into this week's trivia question. How's that?
Sure.
So I'm going to posit the question again, which I said last week. There's that old adage that it's better to have it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. Do you agree with that? I do, actually.
I think so.
Yeah. Because
you got to calibrate. You got to calibrate with the love, and then you know what you're missing.
Yeah. And I come to find out, by the way, that people, and you can confirm this or not, but I had heard from my other friend who's a psychiatrist that people who have the best relationships are able to bounce back the quickest. So if, God forbid, somebody passes and so forth, and I've said to Katie, if I go, please marry someone and make sure he has a lot of money.
Yeah.
Is that true from a psychiatric standpoint?
That I don't know. I guess the way I think about it is that grief is sort of the price we pay for close relationships. So
okay.
So I sort of look at it a little differently.
I like that. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. But anyhow, the question was about sports because as a rabid sports fan myself, the Knicks ended a 53-year drought, which then led me to ask the question, which franchise in the 4 major sports has the longest drought? And so why I'm saying this is this team has experienced the championship before. There are certain teams like the Buffalo Bills, for instance, who have never won a Super Bowl. They don't know the pain. They know the pain. They don't know the euphoria of winning it. So, that's why I'm asking, is it better to have loved and lost? But this team has the longest drought. Do you know who it is?
No. I mean, I'm guessing it's from baseball because of the history.
No, actually, the second place is the Cleveland Indian. What used to be the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians. They won it. I think they are 77 years. The longest drought is actually the Arizona Cardinals. They used to be based in St. Louis, and they used to be based in Chicago previous to that. And I believe they won it in Chicago right around World War II. And they have not won since. So it's been 78 years for them.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're 79 and a Cardinals fan, hang on. you might make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that also leads me to this week's trivia question, which is again sports related and topical, which is the U.S. Open. I love the U.S. Open because the par is usually not 72, meaning they take out par 5s and make them long par 4s and so forth. Do you play golf, Timmy? Have you ever played golf?
No, I've never played golf.
You never been out on the cart or walked it or any of that stuff?
No, I mean, I've walked across golf courses,
Of course. But do you have any interest in doing that?
Not really. I mean, I've done, I've gone to a driving range and, but no, I haven't done much.
And people ask me, they're like, I talk to you like a normal, because you are like a normal guy who just happens to have a challenge that we don't have, which is blindness. But my buddy's like, well, how does he, when you say he reads things, I'm like, well, he's got audio readers that tell him there, he's got Braille, he's got this. And I'll tell folks, you are a black belt in 2 different disciples, right? And further, you were a big high school wrestler and you run.
I ran it. I just wrestled in junior high. Yeah. And as far as there's actually an organization, it's a blind golf association. So they have
I'm sure there is.
They have a slightly larger cup and then an audio thing that beeps at that to tell you which way. And I don't know if there's your caddy has extra training, or, if there's a caddy who helps, but it sounds cool. It's not my thing.
Huh. Yeah. Well, anyhow, so the question that I have this week is, there have been 45 people who have won the U.S. Open with a above even score, meaning they took extra strokes. Usually the champions for these majors are under par, which means that they conquered the course in fewer strokes than is typically required by par. So let's say par is 72, they shot 69. So they're 3 strokes under, right? That's where you get the negative numbers. Mm-hmm. There have been 45 champions of the U.S. Open that have been above par, which to me is where it should be. I'm not saying, be 38 over par, but 1 or 2 over par, like at Marion a couple years ago, which is about half hour from my house. I believe the winner was either even or +1 or +2 right there. And I enjoy that because it's reflective of what I think true golf is. Do you know, and I'm sure you do not, but maybe somebody out there does, what the highest score to par for the winner of the U.S. Open was, and who was it?
So they're like so many over is the answer?
Yeah. How many over? The highest over, meaning was it 1 over? Was it 2 over? Was it 3 over? It's much higher than 3 over, I'll be honest.
Huh.
And it was quite a bit ago, but the name is famous if you follow golf. So
interesting. Well, then it's definitely Jack Nicholson.
No,
it's always or Arnold Palmer.
That's the actor. That's the actor, Jack Nicholson.
Oh,
Jack Nicholas. Jack Nicholas.
Jack Nicholas.
Yeah,
okay.
You just added son on.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I have a friend who plays Trivial Pursuit, and any sports question is Bobby Orr. She just says Bobby Orr or Wayne Gretzky because she's a hockey fan. So you're probably right,
Yeah.
So anyway, what are we talking about today, Timmy?
Today we are talking about Iran.
And I hope my laugh is indicating my feelings about this memorandum of understanding. Are you following this situation at all?
I've caught up. I'm
well. You're a lay person. I studied the Middle East. I have been over there and so forth. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but this is kind of where I have always sort of had my love. And so I don't want to get nerdy. I remember one time I got into a real in-depth discussion when the Iraq war was going on with somebody, and the guy looks at me and goes, Boland, and this before I knew Katie, he goes, Boland, you don't talk to women like this at a bar, do you? Because you're never going to go out. I was like, no. Like, I got real nerdy and in-depth and talking about the history of this and the history of that. As a layperson, and I say that, I defer to you when it comes to psychiatric issues. How do you understand the situation in Iran? I'll leave it open-ended like that.
Well, I guess I will say that I just finished reading On Democracies and Death Cults by Douglas Murray,
who we're trying to book for the podcast. If he happens to catch us and wants to be a guest, he is always welcome.
Yeah. So he spent time in the Middle East, in Israel and Gaza after October 7th. And wrote about this. So I think that's informing how I think about this. I read an interesting book on the Shah and the fall of his regime. So I think I have some, general knowledge.
Historical context.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing that from the top level view that I see reminds me a lot of Neville Chamberlain in the 30s.
And for those of you who don't have a sense of history or don't know who Neville Chamberlain is, that is not a compliment. What happened to Neville Chamberlain in the 30s, Timmy?
Yeah,
he over for Hitler. Right?
Yeah, he flew back to Britain and said, we shall have peace in our time. I met with the leader. I met with the leader. We had a good deal.
The leader being Hitler.
Yeah, and we had a good deal, and we're gonna have peace in our time. And Churchill's response basically is appeasement is feeding the alligator in the hopes that it eats you last.
Yeah,
and I think I see a lot of appeasement in what Obama did, and I think I'm going to see a lot of appeasement.
Nope, I'm not letting you get away with just throwing that little nugget in there. I'm not.
Okay, well, explain, John.
All right. So for just the layperson, the general history of Iran is it is Middle Eastern, and as such, it has strategic importance based on the Strait of Hormuz, its geolocation. It has oil, gobs of it, so to speak. So that explains, obviously, its current importance to us. But throughout history, there have been governments that have been backed and overthrown by the U.S. government, most famously the Shah that you just referred to, that was installed by the U.S. government. And in 1979, the Iranians in mass protest rose up and basically said, we don't want you, installed the theocratic government. And since 1979, in that time, we have been at war, if not war, a constant state of bellicosity with Iran.
Well, they also took 52 Americans hostage and held them for
if you've seen the movie Argo, and that's obviously those people were foreign service officers, which I tried to be, Timmy, before they medically disqualified me. But yeah, that is correct. There was the 444-day standoff, and just as the final FU to Jimmy Carter, The Iranians waited until noon, which is officially when the next president comes in. They waited till 12:02 or something like that to release the hostages. So it happened under the Reagan administration. So they just finally kicked Jimmy Carter in the butt one last time on the way out the door, which I'm sure you're happy with. I know you're a Reagan guy. But
I am a Reagan guy. Yeah,
you are. I just want to take away the heliograph. That's all I ask. But anyhow, the situation in Iran is always sort of been one that sort of neoconservatives and true war hawks have always felt. There was a saying during the Iraq War, which at the time, and I'm on record as you know this, Timmy, saying this is going to be a foreign disaster. This is going to be a foreign policy disaster. I thought it at the time. Unfortunately, people's memories were very short because September 11th happened. I have long maintained, for better or for worse, that President Bush could have said, we're going to invade Nicaragua, and people would have said, yep, they were responsible for September 11th. There was no sort of critical thinking, discussion, talks, and that's why I've always said, as much as I like the man and like the family personally, George W. Bush, that his impact on the presidency and on the cost to America will far outweigh even that of Trump going forward. And that's just the reality to me. And Ross Douthat, who writes for the New York Times, and he is a rabid conservative, has said it's time now, 20 years out, that conservatives finally admit what most Americans know, which is that Iraq was a mistake. We shouldn't have done it in the first place. Why am I saying all this? Because at the time, there was a saying amongst even, hawkier war hawks, if you will, that men want to go into Baghdad and liberate Iraq. Real men want to go into Tehran finally and liberate Iran. So there's always been this sort of, let's get them. Bill Maher talks about this. Only in the United States are we able to actively discuss who should we bomb next. Yeah, I'd bomb them. Right. No other country does that. So this has been a thorn in the side of most U.S. presidents, for better or for worse. Iran is a very, very big exporter of terrorism. They are one of the largest state sponsors of terrorism through their, puppets and proxies in the Middle East, whether it be Hezbollah or others. Hamas, yeah, they're not a clear, fair operator, right? That being said, the question is whether or not the stability in the region that they offer is enough to justify leaving them alone. And most presidents have said yes. And you referred to the Obama administration. The major concern for most people in foreign policy today is that Iran gets their hands on a nuclear weapon. Obviously, our chief ally in the region, Israel, is most concerned with it and has basically been prodding and pushing the United States. And they've taken actions. They've assassinated people. There's all sorts of stories that, Mossad has done things to eliminate some of the hierarchy and people in the Iranian leadership and so forth and so on. So that's the big challenge. In 2015, there was a joint agreement that was negotiated by Obama. Conservatives roundly lamented it. Others basically said, it ain't bad. It's not what we want. But again, I tell people that when you negotiate with people, you don't negotiate with your friends. It's not, you get this, I get that. Great, everybody's happy. Most people leave the negotiating table disappointed. That being said, I never thought he would do it. I thought even Trump would be, I know he's not, he's extraordinarily talented. You don't become the president of the United States. You don't do all these things. He's got talent. I don't know if he's terribly smart is the difference. And why I say that is I thought, there's no way he's going to do this. But he did. He decided he was going to start bombing Iran. And now we have a 14-point memorandum of understanding. Say that again out loud. A 14-point memorandum of understanding. Not an agreement. And again, when Trump became president in 2016, as he has every right to do, he basically discarded the nuclear agreement that was negotiated by Obama that basically, held back. Long and the short of it is basically, Iran, if you stop making your nuclear weapons, we'll open up, we'll lift some of the sanctions. You can start selling your oil legitimately. You can start re-engaging in the global commerce, as it were. That's basically the overall basic idea of what we're trying to do. This memorandum of understanding is hysterical. There's no other way to put it. And I just, if for somebody like myself who works in sales, to say that you have a memorandum of understanding, your boss would be like, well, that's not a win. You didn't close the deal. We don't have the check. We don't have the signature. This is basically, but my question to you, Timmy, is, does it matter to the Trump people? Because John Jr. and everyone else is going to come out and say the greatest president in the history of the world, the greatest person who's ever walked the planet, negotiated the greatest deal ever, blah, blah, blah. Because his sycophants, I wonder if facts matter is my question. Do you think that it's going to matter about this? Because the facts of this memorandum of understanding are not good at all.
Yeah. Well, and just to talk about the Obama deal a little bit, I think, if I recall right, the terms allowed for them to destroy 98% of their basically high quality bomb grade
Uranium.
uranium, right? So,
Yeah.
oh, they only have 2%, they can only make a couple bombs, right?
Again,
Like,
I understand
so,
that, Timmy. I do. Perfect is not the good. Meaning, in negotiations, there's never going to be a 100% elimination of. It's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. I mean, you understand human
well,
nature.
let me give you an analogy though. I think we tend to and want to think about these negotiations like deals between rational actors, right? You give me this, I give you that. Now, in the mental health space, I see this when a police officer with good intent encounters somebody who's mentally ill and is like, put down the knife and then we'll talk. But the person who's mentally ill thinks, the cop is beaming radio waves from his head and gonna take him to Mars, right?
And that person, by the way, definitely voted for Trump. With the space lasers.
Yeah. So the quid pro quo doesn't work because the other person is not a rational at that moment, not acting like a rational actor. When you make a deal with Iran, I think we started to see this with the Obama things. They don't let the International Atomic Agency in. They're not going to, why would you think they will comply with you when their MO is to wipe you off the planet? This is what Israel, this is what Israel gets into. It's like, how do you make peace with someone whose goal is your destruction?
Yeah.
And so I don't know at some level if any agreement has value.
But again, is there not validity to the statement that I just said, which is it's important to understand in negotiating that the enemy of the perfect is not the good? Meaning, if we got
for rational actors who will abide by agreements.
Can be true at the same time. I understand that. And the Babylon Bee has had a field day with this. And I'll read some of the headlines. And the Babylon Bee tends to be, I wouldn't say pro-Trump, but certainly not as anti-Trump as I would imagine myself to be. Right. So let me just read you some headlines. And again, I know you're going to say, well, it's obviously from the New York Times. Then I'm going to read some others. You ready?
Yeah.
So Nicholas Kristof, who is a raging liberal, I'll be the first person to tell you. He's a very, very astute, erudite writer. He's very good. He writes for the New York Times. And he says Trump was right. The war ended with a surrender. And then he goes on and he says, President Trump declared in March that a deal to end his war with Iran would require unconditional surrender. But that wasn't quite right. The preliminary agreement he just reached with the Iranian regime was more like a conditional surrender by the United States, of course. And, it's one of these things that literally, first of all, a memorandum of understanding is not an agreement. It's not. It's not even worth the toilet paper that you buy.
Right.
It's basically, I promise to be good. Will you honor that? Sure. And to your point about rational actors, it seems to me that if you actually agree with that statement, the last thing you should be doing is coming up with a memorandum of understanding. Right, Timmy? Okay, so that's from the New York Times. Now let me read you the Wall Street Journal. Not exactly a paragon of liberal virtue. What Iran gets from its U.S. deal, even if it gives us nothing. This is by their editorial board. Waiving oil and banking sanctions would be a bailout for the regime. He says, we don't have to give the Iranians anything if they don't make the commitments that we want long-term on the nuclear program. So said Vice President J.D. Vance on Monday, and it has become his mantra across a blitz of TV interviews. The problem, of course, is that if you read the Memorandum of Understanding that vaguely outlines the deal, it's simply not true. The MOI, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, commits the U.S. to give a substantial sanctions relief up front throughout the negotiations, though the regime has made no serious concessions on nuclear matters. And then it says, you ready for this, Timmy? Your old buddy Barack Obama. Even Barack Obama's 2015 nuclear deal that didn't fully waive oil sanctions until after inspectors verified that Iran had implemented its nuclear commitments. This memorandum and the lifting of the U.S. blockade, through which several million barrels of Iranian crude have since passed, will allow Iranian exports worth billions a month.
Yeah.
So it's basically saying, look, we don't like Barack Obama. He got a better deal than this.
Yeah. And to be clear, I am not happy with this deal. And I am not happy how it leaves the nuclear part out. Well,
first of all, the fact that it's called a memorandum of understanding, when you're trying to eliminate, to your point, people that you think are theocratic, that are hell-bent on the destruction of Israel and the rest of the world, and, here's a handshake agreement.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I'm so cynical that I don't know how much treaties with regimes with these kinds of values, how valuable they are, period. Right? You need,
but it gives you a
what are we
recourse
going to say?
if there's a violation.
Trust but verify, right? You at least have to have that.
I know, but that was when we were negotiating with people that were at worst on equal footing with us in terms of their nuclear stockpile, the former Soviet Union. They, in fact, had more nuclear weapons than we did, the United States. And that's where we got the term mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
What makes this foundationally different and why I find this even more appalling is, A, it's a memorandum of understanding. It's not a deal.
Yeah.
B, it's basically kowtowing to a regime over which you just started bombing, right? And saying, oh, well, it'd be as if Neville Chamberlain went to Hitler and said, which essentially he did, yeah, take Munich, have it. You're good,
you go.
Blah. Right.
Have Czechoslovakia on us. Yeah.
And then thirdly, the fact that like it's not going to matter to people who like President Trump, because again, I think President Trump's appeal, as much as I loathe him and I disagree with nearly everything he does, says, is, what have you, is that he sticks it in the eye of the establishment. But if sticking it in the eye of the establishment means endangering the rest of us, which clearly this memorandum of understanding does, that ain't good, is it, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, I think Reagan had a touch of this, and I think Trump has a lot of it. If we think about the rational actor theory, from the other side, if an opponent doesn't know what we're capable of or willing to do, that theoretically gives us leverage, right? People were afraid Reagan was going to do things, right? He's going to hit the button, whatever it was, right? And I think Trump seemingly had that leverage as a wild card, but I think he's given it all away.
And are you sitting down, Timmy?
Yeah.
Because I'm actually going to agree with you that I think one of the things that Trump has brought, again, a clock without batteries is right twice a day. I get that. But Trump has brought his erratic, unpredictable nature has probably in some ways made a lot of people sit back and go, I don't know what this guy's going to do. We should probably negotiate with him, right?
Yeah,
exactly. I don't want him anywhere than nuclear codes. I don't want him in the Oval Office. In fact, I will go to my grave telling you that I think having no president at this point would be better than having him. That being said, however, I agree with you. I'll give him credit for that. And he has squandered that by just basically, and you know what makes it even more egregious to me?
What's that?
He basically said, in no uncertain terms, the reason he's doing this is the economic cost, and he doesn't want to lose the midterms. Well, let me ask you a question then. Why did you start it in the first place? I don't, what was the point?
Well, I think you also sent me something from the Wall Street Journal that says maybe Congress is going to have to approve this. Because, my Constitution says the Senate ratifies treaties, right? And clearly this is just a memorandum of understanding, but there's also legislation from 2015 when people the legislature was trying to rein in Obama at the time, ironically. And now it sounds like Congress is going to have to approve any deal that comes down the pike.
That may be true on paper, Timmy. That may be. But I don't know if you've noticed the spine of Republicans in the Trump administration. It's not exactly the strongest bone in their body, right? I mean, John Kennedy, one of my favorite lines is somebody said one time, John Kennedy won the Pulitzer Prize for running Profiles in Courage. It was stories of politicians who did what was right and it might have cost them or what have you. And somebody said, there is a reason to remember that Profiles in Courage was a 1-volume book. Yeah. There's very few examples of courage in politics.
Yeah.
To that end, Trump wants to get this Arc de Triomphe or whatever built. That's basically, I'm sure, going to be gold-plated and have Trump Hotel written across the top. So he's just bypassing Congress. He had this pool, this reflecting pool, done by a private contractor. Now the paint's peeling. There's algae. He said it was $14 million. No taxpayer money was going to be involved. That's not true. He just bypassed. It's literally a loot the place presidency. Let's grab whatever we can on the way out before the cops get here. And the problem that I have with it is you're absolutely right that Congress should do something. But right now, until Congress is out of the Republicans' hands, I can all but guarantee you they're going to go, well, it's not worth it fighting him because I want to keep my seat. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, but you keep this up and Congress will be out of Republican hands pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, but the other thing that makes me nervous, and I want it as much as possible, and I've said this to you before, even when a Democrat is in office, I think the most effective or perhaps the best government is one that is balanced, meaning if Obama's president, I'm okay with the Senate being controlled by Republicans, right?
Yeah, I say it the other way. I say gridlock is the best because at least nothing bad gets done.
Right. Yeah.
A government that governs less governs best.
And poorly, right?
Poorly.
Yeah. Well, the other line that I love is every time Republicans rail about how ineffective government is, and then once they get into office, they prove the point.
Right.
So, but it's as though he is, and again, Bill Maher, to his credit, gave last week tonight his new rules this week about America's celebration of 250. And he basically said in no uncertain terms, look, Trump's going to try and make it about him as he does everything else. Don't let him, number one. And number two, it's our celebration. We're liberals. We have done things that have advanced, civil rights and all these other things. Don't let Trump steal the spotlight. Celebrate America. Celebrating America and saying Trump is bad can be done in the same sentence.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great reminder. And he also talked about, look, are we taking on water, the government? Yes. I have certain constitutional guardrails that we've taken for granted been eroded under the Trump administration? No doubt. But guess what? We're still advancing forward.
I mean, we had Warren G. Harding, too. We had Richard Nixon. Like, we'll get through things.
I know. But, Timmy, just to add some levity to this whole thing, can I read you 3 or 4 headlines?
Yeah, those were hilarious. Go for it.
Okay. So the first one that I love is Iran wins $300 billion cash prize for placing second in war. Because the U.S. is basically paying them $300 billion. Now, I'll actually go to bat that the government is not per se paying them. It's just opening Iran to private investment and certain things like there's going to be power plants built by the UAE there and blah, blah. They're basically lifting sanctions. But it says Iran wins $300 billion cash prize for placing second in the war. Another one, world breathes collective sigh of relief as terrorists promise to be good. Mm-hmm. Which is basically what a memorandum of understanding is.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think that Iran, which in a lot of ways I agree with, I think that hyperbole can take over sometimes about talking about certain things. But I think it's clear that Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. They are clearly a threat to the region. Do I think that necessitates the U.S. involvement to overthrow it? That's where it gets dicey to me. Right. I'm not adverse to it. I just need to understand the pros and the cons. Right.
Right.
Okay. Then there's another one. World leaders line up to ask Trump to bomb their countries for a while and then give them a few $100 billion. Oh no, Trump negotiates deal with England and now they have the colonies back. And then finally, this is perhaps my favorite because every married man can relate to this. Learning from Trump, man successfully negotiates wife down to absolutely everything she wants. I mean, these are pro, I wouldn't say pro, but they're not anti-Trump sort of rags, if you will, the Babylon Bee and Wall Street Journal and so forth. And of course, I'm not putting the Babylon Bee in legitimate journalism circles like the Wall Street Journal. What I am saying, though, is when your friends are telling you this is a bad deal and your enemies are telling you this is a bad deal and the Iranians are celebrating, it's probably a bad deal. If it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, guess what? It's probably a duck.
Yeah,
right?
I'd agree.
Any final thoughts on it, Timmy?
Well, I guess, so part of me always wonders how much the individual can change things versus the constraints of the systems and that. And I kind of think Trump is in some ways a very similar, and you would say less effective spot than Obama with the same problem. Right.
And this has been a problem, but again, this has not just been Trump or Obama's problem. It was Clinton's problem prior to that, Bush's problem prior to that, it was Reagan's problem prior to that. I mean, it's been a thorn in the side of multiple U.S. presidents.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things that I tell people all the time is, look, we haven't had a war yet with them. So you kind of have to remember that, not having a war is a good thing. And I'm not saying that their behavior is acceptable. I'm certainly not saying that they're not a threat and shouldn't be taken seriously. But I never thought Trump would do this. I didn't. And again, like for instance, the Babylon Bee also said, finally, Strait of Hormuz open after war with Trump. It was open before we started. Like it's just nothing was accomplished.
It seems futile.
Gas prices are through the roof. And to your point, I think Republicans are going to take a slap on the you-know-what in November. At least I hope they do. Because I find this behavior of just pushing around Congress as though it's a nuisance to be, swatted away to be unacceptable, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, Timmy, I have a whack job this week. And it is apropos to what we've been talking about. It is the man who keeps on giving. And he is the embodiment of the idea that, look, there is no bottom. And that is our current vice president,
Jefferson Davis Vance?
Yes, Jefferson Davis. What is his? It's not Jefferson Davis. Don't tell me that's his initials are John. I know that John David or John something Daniel. It is the current vice president. He is the absolute embodiment of the ideal that there is no bottom. And further, he is the sort of embodiment of that Seinfeld line that I use with some regularity, where Elaine looks at Jerry and says, Jerome, every time I think you can't get more shallow, you let just a little bit more out of the pool. He has now been tasked, because I know Trump doesn't want to go out there and face the cameras and have people ask legitimate questions that should be asked, like, what does this memorandum of understanding commit us to for this, and this? By the way, because what it basically does, Timmy, is it establishes a framework for negotiation over 60 days. After this, we can do that. Trump's already said he's willing to extend the negotiations. It's like Iran got everything they wanted and took a couple punches. That's it, right? Mm-hmm. So J.D. Vance has been tasked, and he has done so. I don't know how he gets up in the morning. I don't. And literally gets out there and starts scolding people about how great this is. And he tells Israel, you're wrong. This is a great deal. Israel, who faces constant threats, constant destruction, is on the ground in the area. And he's basically lecturing them that, no, you like this deal. Do you remember? And again, another Seinfeld analogy. He said, your first birthday and your last birthday. People bring you friends and say, these are your friends. You like these people, right? Mm-hmm. You have no idea what's going on. That's what this Iran deal is. It's an awful negotiation. It's not even a deal. It's a memorandum of understanding that commits us to absolutely nothing. Iran gets to go on like business as usual, gets $200 billion of investment, gets to sell oil, and continue its pain-in-the-ass behavior in the Middle East. And J.D. Vance is out there lecturing Israel that, yes, you like this deal, and if you don't like it, we're going to start, punishing you. To me, he just, every week he could be my whack job of the week, but this week in particular. So, yep. J.D. Vance, Tim.
Jefferson Davis Vance, folks.
That is good. I like that.
All right. Well, my hero, John, comes from Pauls Valley, Oklahoma High School. So this is in April. A 20-year-old former student walked in with 2 semi-automatic pistols. He attempted to fire, basically had a misfunction of his firearm. And in that window around that time, the principal of the high school essentially tackled him and wrestled the gun away, receiving a non-life-threatening wound to his leg. So the principal got shot. His name is Kirk Moore. So courage, quick acting, saved lives. And, unfortunately, these school shootings are too common. We've talked about this, but one principal with guts and courage saved kids that day. So he is my hero of the week, Kirk Moore.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Timmy, one of the wonderful things about being friends with you and we do this podcast, we can bring news to you as it breaks, because I am not exaggerating when I tell you this. Breaking right now across the wires, Iranian forces say they have closed the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's military command blamed the United States, saying it failed to prevent Israel from violating the ceasefire it had agreed to in Lebanon. Real time. It's happening. The memorandum of understanding at 11:38 on a Saturday morning lets you know that this is not going to go well.
Right.
Neville Chamberlain. We should come up with something for Trump. I like Jefferson Davis Vance, and we should come up with something for Trump.
We should, yeah.
Real-time news breaking. Unbelievable. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, Timmy, anyway, happy Father's Day to all those out there. You are an essential part of children and humanity and life. And, I love being a father. It's the best. And I joke that it is the single greatest day of the year. But for all the fathers out there, have a wonderful Father's Day. And, Timmy, this is John Boland signing off saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
Yep, I echo that with all the fathers. So if you're a father, clearly you've had a father, reach out to those people who have mentored you in your life, and let them know how much they matter. This is Tim saying, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Let's keep talking.